I'd like to talk today about my thoughts on where to invest as far as geographically. Like what market is the best market to invest in. And I think this is really important because this is going to give the money flows to support a certain market, okay, which is sort of the essence of like how a stock market's going to rise or fall if there's a depletion of the funds in a stock market, okay? And this is sort of like the river current, up or down that you're going to go against. So I think it's kind of important. And as well as looking at like, the risk involved within certain markets, okay? All right. So let's first look at like China. China is not a market that I would invest in. And I think a lot of people would share that same reasoning. It may have looked good, like several years ago, and you've got a lot of pluses, as far as if you just look at it like overall, you go, wow, it's a very wealthy country. Um, it's technologically, it's growing. It's makes like most of the things we use in the world. Um, face value, it looks great, but turn to the last few years, and you've got this this reasoning of all these positives turns real negative when you see even the Chinese people have lost faith in their stock market, and they buy property as their hedge, of wealth. Um, and this is what led to their property debacle, with the Evergrande and so on. You've got a generation of people who've lost faith in their stocks, and this is where you're seeing like Alibaba, and you look at their like, their fundamentals, and you go, how can a stock like this be so under $100? When you look at like Amazon, it just shows you what I'm talking about. When you look at the stock market and the geopolitical issues, economic issues behind the two. This is the river current that I'm talking about. Look at Amazon. Now, yes, the river current could be shifting with Amazon, but as a backdrop the last few years, you see the river pulled Amazon up, and the river current negative had pulled Alibaba down. So this is massive divergence. It could have been the other way around, but it worked. This is the way. So this is the way it worked out. And so people who are astute, they saw that problem with China, and they decided, they wouldn't invest in China, and they would invest in somewhere better, in like the United States, and they made a lot more money. So this is the importance of all this. Okay, and getting back to the overall market situation with China, I don't think it's good going forward. I think the demographics are real negative on China. Also, it's going to be real susceptible to a global slowdown because they make everything, and that's going to really hurt their economy. The property debacle just seems to be getting worse, and there could be a lot more defaults coming. We're probably in the tip of the iceberg with all this, and the Evergrande thing is just being propped up probably more by the government intervention than anything else. As far as there's a lot of money that's being lost on that. As far as their currency is probably going to get stronger, and it's probably going to hurt them business wise. As far as the other factors, as far as with the government being so autocratic, you can see how like a certain action by the government, it's completely dominate the economy. Like they lock down like Shanghai, millions and millions of people had to stay inside their homes for like going on a month. Can you imagine if that happened in the USA? That would be like all New York City, all the whole metro area, all upstate New Jersey, all being contained in their homes for 3 or 4 weeks. What would that do to the economy here? That would be disastrous. And that's what's happening to them. It's going to be a disastrous blow to their GDP. Okay, so you see the geopolitical situation in China is just overwhelming. Okay, and this is why I don't think it's a very good place to invest. And people see this. People see what's going on in Shanghai and say, I'm not going to invest in that. So you can probably count investing China as our first one we're looking at is a no-no. Okay. Now let's look at Australia. Australia's like the lapdog, caught between, there's like a couple. There's the guy who he kicks it, and he doesn't really want the lapdog around. And then you got but the dog, it was his first, that was his first owner, so the dog thinks of that as like his friend and so on, even though he's abusive. And the lady, she, gives it food, buys all, takes it to the vet, buys all the shots and the dewormer and everything, takes her good care of the dog. But the dog doesn't really love the lady that much. So China is like the lady, and USA is like the guy. The USA puts Australia into bad situations, like with the sanctions and all this other stuff going on right now. In strapping it into some nuclear submarine program. All these things are very negative for Australia, because Australia relies completely on China. It's a commodities exporting nation, totally reliant on China. So where China goes, Australia goes. And unfortunately, Australia doesn't have such a great relationship with China, which is really bad, considering that's its main avenue of revenue. So China's looking at like South American companies, to fill the void, like Vale, and others, to reduce its reliance, on Australia, because it sees Australia as a friend of USA and is sort of like, foe of China. So it's not looking good for Australia. And if there's a global slowdown, do you want to invest in commodities in Australia reliant on China with a frictionless relationship? Probably not. Unless you believe there's going to be this massive, rebound right, very time soon. Probably not. I think most people agree that we're probably entering some kind of depression. According to research, it shows that it's probably going to happen in 2023. It's already happening. It's just going to get worse. All right, and let's look at our next area. Let's look at, say, Africa and South America. Let's just do both of those. I don't think Africa is that developed yet to really make it real viable. There's a lot of corruption. Same with South America. It's always had a lot of potential. You look at some of these, petroleum companies and so on. You go, wow, why isn't this? This is like, why isn't everyone wanting to get into this? Petro Brazil, and why is the PE so low? Compared to Exxon and Chevron, and how come they're not doing so well? And they're making some profits and they got a dividend, and it's like, what's going on? It's just, you've got that geopolitical stability, you've got the debt problems there, the corruption, and I think these are stigmas that live long in South America. And you've got some amazing companies, and there's some red herrings in there that do well. But or are you going to base your whole portfolio on South America when you have an Argentinian peso crash? What's going to happen? So I think South America is good for a few plays, but it's not going to be that market you want to put a lot into. It says the same thing for Africa, almost, based on the same thing. And we've got bands of rebels and mercenaries running around in some of these countries in Africa. They can't even keep the Nigerian oil flowing consistently. So now Africa could really get it together going forward. It could completely change, and it could be potentially a very viable investment opportunity. But at this time, I think you want to stay away from that. And there could be a lot of famine, which seems to hit Africa the hardest. All right, let's look at India. I think India is potentially a very good market. And I like the way that they insulated themselves from this whole sanction stuff. They could smell crap a mile away, and they knew that this is something you did not want to get involved with, to play the virtue signaling card. Bad idea. This is what's happening with Australia. They're playing the virtue signaling card. Going woke gives you broke. Over and over and over. Look at Disney. Great example. I do not understand what people are thinking. Period. Now, looking at some Asia markets, Japan demographically is in doo-doo. There are some other markets that may do fairly well, and if you're a good picker, you may find things in Korea, some other spots that you may do fairly well. So again, Asia becomes like a stock picker's market. Overall, I think it's going to do better than the Western countries will. Okay, now let's move on to Europe. Europe, if you're a sadist, a masochist, then Europe is your place. A sadist from the USA point of view, because USA put Europe into this position. These sanctions are so ridiculous. They are so terrible. Anyone with 2 brain cells looking at this is going to say, you are out of your minds. You are out of your minds. You are out of your minds. Captain Dementia, this is his baby, these sanctions. And this is his war. This is his war. Now you can, I don't want to get too specific here, but if you look at the history of that war, and you realize that it could have been resolved by basically, looking at the Minsk Accords that were agreed on several different times, and other promises that NATO would not expand, and they completely blatantly disregarded all their treaties and did it anyway, and we're working on putting nukes, bioweapons labs, and all kinds of other goodies in Ukraine. It would be like Mexico aligning with China, and China moving in all their mobile missile systems and setting up bioweapons labs and everything right there in Mexico. It's insane to think that this would have been tolerated. And there is other factors that escalated this that I don't want to get too into. But this is Biden's baby. Or the people running Biden. This is his baby. So I call this Biden's war. Biden's sanctions. This is what he'll go down in history for. The disastrous outcome to Western Europe will be something we may never see in a long time. I mean, this is just complete insanity. I think most people would agree. They're talking about oil embargo. I mean, these countries, they don't have oil, except for maybe Norway and UK a little, but that's not enough. And they're completely into the green ideology, not just knee deep, neck deep. So their GDP is going to contract, and this market is going to be a sell market of all the markets. This is the one you definitely want to stay away from. And I think most people would agree that. And you also have the demographics of Europe. It's a basket case. So what's left? Russia, maybe. I don't know. I think they're going to be hit as well by a lot of these sanctions, and I think they're doing okay, better than people thought. But as far as like, the market that you would want to throw everything into, would you? Probably not. Again, if you can't even invest in that market as a foreigner, I looked, I tried. It's almost impossible. You may be able to buy some rubles, in which I contemplated, but I didn't. I didn't want to get too involved with all that geopolitical stuff. Now, what's left? We have the United States. Supposedly the richest country in the world, which is not. However you look at the metrics, whether you look at manufacturing capacity and so on, China definitely is. But we'll say second richest country in the world. So the U.S. Let's take a look at the U.S. market. I think the United States market has probably the most credibility, and in difficult times, it's probably where money feels safest. Maybe some India too. I think India is feeling good. But, or maybe Korea and a few other places. But again, it's all revolves around China over there. So if China is going down, maybe, the Asia may not be so hot at the moment. So, sorry, I got on that tangent there. But looking back at the USA, we may be in a trough even in the USA. Okay, because there's one thing you can look at. It's a chart of the midterm years. Like based on different presidents and the the political parties in control and the flipping in the midterms and things like that. And it shows this bottoming out. On that alone, I think it's in June or July maybe, it's a bad year, okay? It's a bad year for this setup. However, let's just look a second at some of the factors that play into this flip in the midterms. Things could not be worse right now. You got a lame duck, even without the Congress. He's so lame. He's Captain Dementia running the controls of a big wrecking ball. And this guy is smashing everything down. He's just going down the street with this wrecking ball, blind as a bat, smashing over historic monuments and buildings. This guy he's off his rocker. And everyone's just letting them do it. It's really beyond imagination that this could have ever happened. And until Captain Dementia is neutralized, things are just getting worse in USA. Now in November, it's going to flip hard. Now this is going to be a massive change in sentiment. When the Republicans get in, and I'm not, this real political guy here, so I'm not like really pro one way or the other that much, other than I want to see things get better. But I would say the Republicans are definitely going to be in a better position to save the situation. Like I said, you've got to neutralize this guy who's running this wrecking ball. If the Republicans get in and they can make some quick changes and do some pro-business legislation, small business pro stuff, maybe get some tax breaks going. They got to hit the pavement hard running. This could be massive. Get the energy section going. Our energy, it could be doing very well. A lot better than it is. If they did a lot of these things, you could see a massive rebound in the U.S. economy. Just when everyone thinks there's this massive recession, it could swing completely the other way. Again, the sentiment is so bearish right now that people are not seeing things correctly. They're seeing things extremely negative, and they're not really looking at the maybe the reality of what can happen, and that is that we could end up getting a boom. I firmly believe that. And I think we are in a trough. Now also you have to keep in mind that the stock market smells stuff before it's so obvious. And I think as we start getting into near, the midterm talk starts coming out a lot more, then you're going to see the stock market starting to go up. And everyone's going to be, all these bearish positions and with puts and everything, thinking this is the doomsday, but reality is that things are going to switch around and start going positive. And they're going to be caught in the wrong side again. Max pain, baby. Always. Always. So, in summary, I think you're going to see money flowing into the USA now and into the future based on these factors. For one, there's a lot of fear out there. Not just the fear of the market sell-offs, but the fear of what could happen to my money based in China, based in Europe, based in, over in South America. Where do I want to put my money now? Okay, that the fear factor to preserve your wealth brings it to the U.S. market. Yes, we don't really make a whole lot, and our economy is a lot of funny money, but there's that perception of safety in the U.S. market. Okay, the other thing is the global political thing, which I think goes on for many years, which also drives money into the U.S. market when people see the returns just not there going forward, with China and so on as well. So you have the fundamental thing playing out as well. So it's not just fear, but it actually will be fundamentals, and especially when you had the midterm flip, you see the money really starting to cascade into the U.S. So that's my summary, and I hope this makes some sense. I do think that this is the time to kind of get into the market before everyone else does. Yes, you may have some pain coming, but I do think that based on these factors I outlined, that there makes a case for why the U.S. market may be the best place to invest.